6 months into trying to win him back, Edward and I ended up on a travel reality show together. We were hiking into the mountains. I accidentally tumbled down a slope. Every part of me ached. I swallowed my pride and whined, "Edward, give me a hand?" He ignored my outstretched hand. I scrambled up and shamelessly chased after him. "Can't I at least lean on you?" Edward glanced back, his voice ice cold. "Charles, you're so annoying. Hurry up. Don't slow down the group." I didn't dare say another word. Not until we reached the lodge at the summit. In the lobby, I was huddled against a corner. Edward glared down at me. "Get up. Stop playing the victim." The next second, a teammate screamed, "Blood! Charles is bleeding everywhere. Ow, that hurts." I slowly picked myself up. I frowned and rubbed my lower back, which was aching to the point of numbness. Looking up, I saw Edward standing on the slope above, staring down at me with a blank expression. A few rays of sunlight hit him. His sharp, towering silhouette was like an unclimbable mountain. I swallowed my pride and put on my best pout. "Edward, won't you give me a hand?" He ignored my desperately outstretched hand. Edward turned and started walking toward the summit. Since we'd met again, this was the 108th time my attempt to be cute had failed. I didn't even bother brushing the dirt off myself. I climbed back up the slope and hurried to catch up with Edward. I stuck to him shamelessly, asking, "I think I hurt my leg. Can't I just lean on you?" Edward glanced back, his voice cold. "Charles, you're so annoying. Hurry up. Don't slow down the group." My lips parted, then closed. In the end, I decided to just shut up. "You're so stupid, Charles. You made Edward mad again." I rubbed my throbbing lower back. I thought glumly, "At this rate, I have no idea when we'll ever get back together." Edward, who was gentle with everyone else, could say such harsh things to me. "Charles, please stay away from me. Charles, don't waste your energy. I'll never forgive you. Charles, you're so annoying." After we met again, Edward had said these things to me many times. First, it hurt so much. It felt like my heart was being stabbed to pieces, bleeding everywhere. But later, the wounds calloused over, and hearing it again and again didn't hurt anymore. Just try a little harder. I told myself, "You're the one who broke up with him so brutally and then disappeared for 2.5 years. What's a little yelling now? Even if he hit me a couple of times, it'd be okay." But Edward seemed really mad this time. Forget hitting me. He wouldn't even touch me. "You have no shame." The other actress on the trip caught up to me and said scornfully, 3 years ago, you were a classic gold digger. Ditched him for some sugar daddy, and now that Edward's famous, you come crawling back to kiss his ass." I didn't defend myself. I just said quietly, "Anna, you're a terrible actress. I could tell right away you were just pretending to be scared of a snake so you could deliberately bump into me." Our show was a travel reality competition. The other group of 4 celebrities was climbing the mountain from the other side. It was a race between the 2 groups. Only the winning team would get to stay at the hot spring resort at the summit tonight. Our cameraman got sick halfway and couldn't continue up the mountain. Since I'd studied photography, I was temporarily tasked with filming B-roll with a handheld camera. Halfway up, the mountain got steep. Anna, who was walking in front of me, suddenly screamed, "A snake!" Then she spun around and lunged at me. I didn't see a snake, but she knocked me right off the steep path. Anna panicked, then got defensive. "Don't make things up if you don't have proof." I checked the camera. Then I walked past her. "Give it a rest. Edward's not going to like you with or without me." "We'll see about that," Anna sneered. "But no matter how much you suck up to him, he'll definitely never like you." I froze. Felt like a needle had pierced my heart. Waves of pain washed over me. He did. I turned on the camera, framing Edward's distant back in the center of the screen. I whispered in protest, "He used to." 24-year-old Edward had loved 20-year-old Charles. All the proof was stored safely in my heart. Edward saved me during a filming accident. Edward wasn't gay, but he couldn't resist me wearing him down and finally said yes when I asked him out. Edward came out to his agency. Edward worked so hard, seriously planning a future that included me. He wouldn't even throw away clothes or shoes when they were worn out. He said he was saving up so we could get married abroad. Then we'd buy a house I liked. Edward had sharp, deep-set features. He rarely showed his emotions or what he was thinking, but he was the gentlest, most dependable person I had ever met. He was always so serious about me and our relationship. If it weren't for what happened 3 years ago, we might have already been married overseas. Edward made a lot of money now, but he'd already cut me out of his future. The sky, which had been gloomy all day, suddenly started to drizzle. Mist began to rise from the grassy slopes. Visibility dropped sharply. From a distance, I heard Edward shout, "Everyone, watch your step." I couldn't pass up any chance to talk to him. So I yelled back, "Got it. You be careful too, Edward." After shouting cheerfully, my vision suddenly went black. I stood still for a moment to recover. I vaguely saw someone from the front of the group turning back. He asked urgently, "Charles, are you hurt?" A figure emerged from the mist. It was Joseph, a male celebrity from our group. I gave a faint smile. I cursed myself for my wishful thinking. How could it be Edward? He was still mad at me. "I'm fine, Joseph." Joseph walked up to me. His eyes scanned me from head to toe. He lowered his voice. "Are you sure? You're pale as a ghost. I told you not to do such a dangerous show. You can't get hurt." How am I supposed to explain this to Mr. Smith? Joseph had known me since I was little, so he knew what happened 3 years ago. "I'm all better now. You don't have to tell him I fell." I didn't want to talk about it. I grabbed Joseph's arm to turn him around. "Joseph, you should go back to leading the way. Don't worry about me." But when I looked up, I saw Edward, who had suddenly appeared behind Joseph. He stood about 6 feet away. The mist blurred his figure. I couldn't see his expression either. Before I could get closer, I heard Edward's sharp voice, "Please don't waste everyone's time. If you don't want to keep going, you can turn back." "No, it's not like that." Joseph stepped forward, trying to explain for me. 3 years ago, Charles." "Joseph," I cut him off. "Don't. Let's just hurry." Joseph looked at Edward walking away, surprised. He seemed to be wondering why the normally easygoing guy was so furious. The rain kept falling. It soaked through all my clothes. The path was wet and slippery. The sky grew darker as time passed. I felt waves of cold wash over me, and I kept feeling a warm trickle down my lower back. I reached back and blindly felt around. Then I opened my palm to look. A dark liquid was trapped in the lines of my hand, quickly diluted by the rain. It must be mud from when I fell. I thought to myself. I had just started to hurry after them. When I heard Anna whine, "What a dump! I hate this." She ran to the front of the group. She threw her arms around Edward's. "Team leader, this path is so hard to walk, and my backpack is so heavy. Can you hold my hand? I'm so tired I could die." "Ugh, so groß. Edward would never hold your hand." And sure enough, Edward glanced at her and said seriously, "Holding hands isn't safe." But before I could even smile, I heard him continue, "Let me take your pack." Anna giggled. "Oh, I couldn't. I packed a lot of skincare products. It's really heavy. It doesn't look like you brought much. How about I carry yours?" "No." I ran between them. I spread my arms to shield Edward. "You have to carry your own bag." Edward looked at me. His brow furrowed slightly, and a wave of pressure seemed to roll off him. He said sternly, "Charles, what's wrong with you?" Through the curtain of rain, I stared at Edward, bewildered. Then I heard him say, "Don't push it. Charles, you're too old to be throwing tantrums." I thought he was concerned. I tried to ignore the hurt. At the same time, I was relieved. Thank God Edward didn't find out last night that I'd put something in his backpack. He definitely would have thrown it out. I suddenly felt a surge of indignation. I lowered my head and said stubbornly, "She can't carry your bag, and you can't carry hers." "Charles." Anna's face was furious. "What right do you have to boss Edward around? If he doesn't carry my bag, are you going to carry it for me?" "Fine." It wasn't a big deal for a guy to carry a girl's backpack anyway. After I said it, I slung Anna's bag from the ground onto my back. The heavy pack slammed into my back. My face contorted in pain, and my body swayed. Edward watched me with cold eyes. He said indifferently, "Suit yourself." He turned and walked away quickly. The sky grew even darker. We had to move faster, but my feet felt incredibly heavy. On this rain-soaked evening, my mind hazy, I couldn't stop thinking about all the details of sharing a hotel room with Edward last night. The things that made me feel lost, resentful, and yet made my heart flutter. Because of a room shortage at the lodge downhill, the production team had us double up. I agreed with a huge smile. I trotted over to Edward. "Babe, room with me. You know me."
Ima kiet slape, no snoring.
But he didn't even look at me. He told the director, "I'll room with anyone but Charles." Seeing my embarrassment, Joseph smiled and said, "Charles, did you forget about me? Let me room with you, okay?" My smile was strained. I nodded. "Okay." Just then, Edward, who had already gotten his key card from the front desk, suddenly came back. He said to Joseph with a cold face, "My roommate wants to talk to you about the next movie. He asked me to switch key cards with you." Joseph looked completely baffled as I frantically pushed him into the elevator. I was afraid if he asked any more questions, Edward would change his mind. The weather was nice last night, not a drop of rain. You could even see the stars from the window. I magnanimously let Edward use the bathroom first. Then I snuck over and opened the backpack he'd left by the bed. As I was putting the item inside, I suddenly saw an orange-red gemstone. It was on a black cord, tucked away in the innermost pocket. Golden flecks shimmered within the orange-red base, like sunlight scattered across stardust. My lips trembled as I murmured, "It's a sunstone. Charles, what are you doing?" I jumped, completely startled. I spun around in a panic to face Edward, forgetting I was still holding the stone. My voice choked. "You remembered, sunstones are native to North America. You rarely see them in our country. 3 years ago, I was lying with my head in Edward's lap and told him, 'Sunstone is my lucky stone. When we get to the US together, you have to buy me one. I'll wear it always.'" Edward looked at me quietly. Then he leaned down and kissed my eyelids and the corners of my lips. He whispered, "Okay." He could have forgotten. I could have accepted it if he'd hated the stone because he hated me. But I never imagined Edward would actually buy one. In that moment, feeling betrayed and abandoned, my heart was torn to shreds, yet a spark of hope ignited instantly. I clutched the stone in my palm and asked, unable to let it go, "You bought this for me, right?" Edward crossed the room in 2 strides. He snatched the stone from my hand. "I bought it for myself." He gripped my wrist tightly. His eyes suddenly turned red. Just to remind myself how stupid and pathetic I was 3 years ago. It hurt so much. I couldn't help but wince. Edward's gaze flickered, and he threw my hand away. He quickly stuffed the stone back into his bag and cinched it tight. With his back to me, he said, "If you ever go through my bag without permission again, I'll have you kicked off this show." The muscles in Edward's back were tense. His voice still held the remnants of his anger. After the warning, Edward turned off the lights and lay down. I watched the outline of his body traced by the moonlight. I suddenly felt how much had changed in 3 years. For instance, the Edward of today really did have the power to get me kicked off the show. In the 2.5 years I was abroad, he had become a red-hot movie star. And me, I was just a Z-list nobody who'd dropped out of film school. Dejected, I slowly got ready for bed. I regretted that the cute cat pajamas I'd carefully picked out to seduce Edward with were going to waste. I crawled into bed wearing a baggy white t-shirt. I stared blankly at Edward. I could still feel the warmth of his palm on my wrist. Edward was lying on the other bed, just 1.5 feet away. He was on his back, facing the ceiling. Edward used to only be able to fall asleep in that serious position. Later, when we moved in together, he started holding me tightly from behind. That way, he could kiss me whenever he wanted. If I squirmed because it tickled, Edward would just kiss me longer. I loved being kissed by Edward. For 3 years, I constantly replayed these happy memories of Edward, these moments that kept me going. The one who was spoiled rotten in a relationship never holds the power. The privilege of being loved had long been taken away by Edward. He was now high and mighty. The rain seemed to have seeped onto my lips. I tasted bitterness. I couldn't help but search for Edward's back in the misty rain, only to realize that my reminiscing had slowed me down. I'd fallen far behind. I adjusted the backpack on my shoulders and started running, my steps clumsy and uneven. Just as I was getting close to Edward, I suddenly tripped on a root. Both me and the heavy pack went flying, landing hard in the mud. I let out a small gasp. I felt like I didn't have the strength to get up again. Charles. I looked up to see Edward standing over me, frowning as he said my name. Rainwater dripped from my hair into my eyes, then slid down from the corners. I blinked slowly. I forced a smile and said, "Edward, I think I'm dying." Edward knew my habit of being overly dramatic, so he didn't ask what was wrong. His frown just deepened. Edward was tall, with broad shoulders. Just by leaning over me slightly, he shielded me from the rain. He reached out a hand, as if to pull me up. "Charles, are you okay?" Joseph came running back from up ahead, his face full of panic. Anna followed behind him. She shrieked, "Oh my God, my bag. It's filthy. All my skincare products are in glass bottles. If they're broken, you're paying for them. Charles, did you do this on purpose?" The two of them crowded around, standing next to Edward. The hand that had been about to grab my arm instead picked up Anna's backpack and handed it to her. Anna's voice was sickly sweet. "Thank you, Edward. But the bag is so dirty now, I don't want to carry it." Joseph helped me up. He asked with a worried face, "Charles, are you okay? Are you hurt? Can you still walk?" I shook my head. I saw Edward pick up Anna's filthy backpack with one hand and sling it onto his own back. I quickly looked away. I said to Joseph, "I can still walk." In my peripheral vision, Edward glanced over. I had caused him trouble, slowed down the team, and was covered in mud. So for the moment, I lost the courage to look him in the eye. "If you can walk, then please hurry up." Edward looked at me. His tone was flat. "Don't use such cheap tricks to get my attention. It's pathetic. Edward, you can't talk to Charles like that. His body..." Joseph stepped forward to argue, then paused to choose his words carefully. "He's not in the best shape. He's been trying really hard today. Why would he fall on purpose?" Edward and Joseph hadn't interacted much before, but today he was showing a lot of hostility. He gripped the strap of his backpack, his knuckles white from the force. "If he's not in good shape, he should go home. Being a kept man seems to suit you better." A dull thud. Joseph's fist connected with the side of Edward's face. "You believe those rumors too?" Joseph sidestepped me as I tried to get between them. He glared at Edward. He continued, "He and Mr. Smith don't have that kind of dirty relationship. So, you're going to apologize to him." I stepped in front of Joseph again, trying to separate them. Edward looked at me, his gaze deep. Then he gave a faint smile. He said to Joseph, "So you're saying his relationship with that Mr. Smith isn't dirty? Does that mean yours is?" A buzzing sound suddenly filled my head, drowning out everything else in the world. I watched Edward and Joseph grab each other's shoulders, like watching a tense, silent play. When the sound of the rain finally seeped back in, Edward's words replayed in my mind over and over. Even though the rain hitting the leaves was loud, his words were painfully clear, painfully sharp. So, that's what he thought of me. He thought I was some rich guy's pet. He thought I'd be involved with a man decades older than me. But I wasn't. I wasn't that kind of person. All the strength drained from my body in an instant. Every breath felt like fire. The walkie-talkie on Edward's hip suddenly crackled, breaking the standoff. Edward, the signal was bad. The director's voice came through, choppy. "Finally got through to you guys. How far are you from the finish line? Are you all okay? Is anyone hurt?" Edward let go of Joseph and pressed the talk button. He looked at me and said to the director in a normal tone, "Charles fell and got hurt. Is there a doctor at the lodge?" Joseph turned to look at me and exclaimed, "You're bleeding." I stood there stunned, looking down at myself. I finally saw a cut on the heel of my right hand, and it was bleeding. "It's nothing." I took some spare gauze from my backpack and wrapped it messily around my hand. Then I said, "Let's get going." It's about to get dark. Anna said snidely, "Oh, you know that? It's your fault we're so slow." I shot her a glare. Then my eyes landed on Edward. He was staring at my hand. A look of displeasure flashed across his face. I couldn't help but hide my hand behind my back. I thought, Edward must be completely fed up with me, because I'm always causing trouble. After another 100 yards or so, we finally saw the lights of the summit lodge. The remaining stretch of the trail was even steeper. My mind grew foggy. My body was moving on pure willpower alone. The voices of the production crew welcoming us sounded like they were coming from underwater. And I was the one about to drown, unable to hear clearly. Everything suddenly became bright. My body was enveloped in warm air. We had entered the lodge's first-floor lobby. I was filthy, so I just sat down on the floor by the wall. Just a little rest. I'll be fine after a little rest. I was still so cold. There was a numb, pulling sensation in my lower back. I curled up in the corner, my head hanging down. The side of my forehead rested against the wall. Felt like I'd only closed my eyes for a second. When I vaguely heard someone call my name, I slowly opened my eyes and saw Edward standing in front of me. His shadow covered me. He said, "The director has been calling you for a while. It's your turn for your solo shot." I nodded, trying to say okay, but no sound came out. Instead, I closed my eyes again. It seemed I'd made Edward angry again. He kicked my shoe lightly. His voice got louder. "Charles, what are you trying to pull now? Get up. Stop playing the victim." The next second, I heard Anna scream from the other side. "Blood! Charles is bleeding everywhere." I dazedly looked at my right hand, but then I saw fresh red blood mixed with rainwater spreading on the floor behind me. I was suddenly pulled into a tight embrace. Edward knelt in front of me. One hand held my shoulder. The other quickly lifted the back of my hiking jacket. Edward took a sharp, deep breath. Then he suddenly spun around and yelled, "Get a doctor. Someone's hurt." I was about to say it was just a scraped wrist, nothing to worry about. But then I saw Edward's hand as he pulled it away from my back. He only touched my clothes. How did it get completely covered in red? Edward held me with his blood-stained hands. For a brief moment, I soaked in his warmth. I heard his heartbeat, a little faster than before. Then he gently laid me down on a long sofa in the lobby. I really wanted Edward to hold me a little longer. But I remembered how dirty I was, and how much he despised me. So I kept quiet and didn't ask. Edward yelled for the doctor again. Then he pulled a piece of clothing from his backpack and pressed it firmly against my lower back. It hurt so much. I wondered why, even after I'd tried so hard to hold on until the end, I still managed to make Edward this angry. His brow was furrowed tightly, and one of his hands trembled as he pushed the wet hair from my eyes. "Charles, what happened to you?" Edward's voice was hoarse, but his tone was gentle as he scolded me. Then he started rambling. "It's okay, you're going to be okay." Edward was suddenly like the Edward from 3 years ago, and my heart almost immediately skipped a beat. But the racing of my heart was accompanied by a sharp pain in my chest, a reminder that Edward had hated me for 3 years. He was probably only changing his attitude because I was hurt and bleeding, and as the team leader, he felt responsible. The doctor and the production team arrived together. They surrounded me. Joseph was terrified. He quickly asked the doctor, "How is he? Does he need surgery or a transfusion?" He pulled out his phone to make a call. "I should just get a helicopter up here now. He needs to get to a hospital immediately." Anna muttered under her breath, "It was just a little fall. A scrape. What's the big deal?" But after the doctor lifted my jacket, she shut up. "The wound is deep, and it's been torn." The doctor said, "Judging by the amount of blood, he's been enduring this for a long time." "When was he injured?" Edward seemed to realize something. He looked dazed. He said with difficulty he was hurt when he fell down that steep slope halfway up the mountain. He said he was in a lot of pain. He asked me to pull him up, to let him lean on me, and I refused. I even told him he was annoying and ordered him to walk faster. Nearly 2 hours on that mountain trail. He endured the pain walking for so long in the rain. I. Edward lowered his head. The words caught in his throat. He let out a pained gasp. You? Joseph roared. You're a real bastard. Just then, the doctor realized that applying pressure wasn't stopping the bleeding effectively. He asked, "Does he have any history of blood disorders?" Edward looked completely blank. He had just started to shake his head when Joseph cut him off. Yes. He gestured with his eyes for the director to lead the others away. Only then did he continue in a low voice. 3 years ago, he had leukemia. Edward's eyes widened instantly. His pupils lost focus. His gaze was empty, hollow. I avoided his eyes, just like I'd been avoiding that memory for the past 3 years. 3 years ago, Edward had caught the eye of a famous foreign director. He was invited to be in a big-budget movie. Edward's parents had died young, and he'd worked his way through college. He was a man of few words, had no connections, and wasn't smooth enough. He'd struggled, clawing his way up from a print model to breaking into the industry. Hadn't been easy. This opportunity was like a gift from fate, a once-in-a-lifetime chance. When we got the news, I was jumping up and down with joy. Edward was there to steadily catch me as I leaped off the sofa. My chest was pressed against his, and only then did I feel how fast his heart was beating. But he said, "The shoot is too long. Almost a year." I cupped his face. I said smugly, "You'll miss me too much, huh? If you beg me, I'll go with you." Edward lifted me high. He looked up at me, silent, then suddenly kissed my lips. His method of begging was highly approved by both my body and soul. So I quickly gave in. Actually, I applied to grad school at an art academy in the US. I thought I'd have to fly back and forth every month. But I didn't expect we could go together. Edward froze for a second, then quickly opened his laptop to retract an email. I didn't get the reaction I expected, and I was a little annoyed. "What's wrong with you?" Edward's tone was flat. "I thought we'd be apart for a year, so I just turned down the director's offer." My jaw dropped. "Are you insane?" When it was confirmed that Edward would be in the movie, I happened to get my acceptance letter from the art academy. We were so excited. We started booking flights and packing a week in advance. 3 days before we were supposed to leave, I got a call from the hospital. They said there was a problem with my physical exam. I needed to come back for more tests as soon as possible. During the bone marrow biopsy, Edward was in the next city over, filming a show. He called me a dozen times during his makeup breaks. I didn't answer. I called him back the next day. I calmly told Edward, "I'm sorry." Edward opened his door, phone in hand. I forgot to hang up. I just kept saying, "I'm sorry," and "I'm not going abroad," and "let's break up." Edward slammed the phone on the ground, grabbed my shoulders, and kept asking me why. I knew Edward would be angry, sad, and then he would hate me. But all of that was better than him giving up everything for someone with a terminal illness. Then someone came to the door. They said, "Mr. Shang, Mr. Smith sent us to pick you up." Edward fell silent. Only I kept telling him I was sorry. But now the one saying "I'm sorry" over and over was Edward. He apologized as he held my hand, keeping me from struggling while they stitched me up. Edward's hand was warm, just like before. I stopped myself from feeling any attachment. I'd already come to terms with the fact that we could never go back. Joseph still called for a helicopter, but the weather was bad, so the departure time was uncertain. After the stitches, the production team put me in a suite at the lodge. Joseph stood in the living room on the phone. I vaguely heard him say to the person on the other end, "The bleeding hasn't stopped. We need to hurry." Edward, after a quick wash, came out of the bathroom and walked over to me. He knelt down, leaning close to me at the head of the bed. He pressed his forehead to mine. Edward's hair wasn't completely dry, and his face was damp. He opened his hand and asked, "Charles, what is this?" In Edward's palm was a small piece of peach wood. Carved on it was a talisman for safety. A delicate red tassel was tied to it. It was the good luck charm I had secretly tucked into Edward's backpack the night before. I knew he probably wouldn't like it, but I didn't want to watch him throw it away with my own eyes. "I put it in there by mistake, sorry." That's what I said. Edward's brow twitched, as if he were suppressing some emotion. Then he mercilessly called my bluff. You went to a temple specifically to get this for me and put it in my bag, didn't you? In the past, I would have denied it vehemently, and then found another chance to hide it where he couldn't find it. But I was too tired now, so I didn't say anything. I just silently thought, if you hate it, it's okay to throw it away. Edward didn't throw it away. Instead, he gently placed the charm under my pillow. He pressed his palms together against his forehead. He closed his eyes reverently. When he opened them again, they were bloodshot. He was silent for a long time. Finally, he choked out, "I'm sorry." Then he added, "That sunstone in my bag. I bought it for you." I looked at Edward, blinking slowly. In a very weak voice, I said, "You're only saying that because you feel sorry for me, right?" Edward closed his eyes in pain. His voice trembled. "No." He got up and retrieved the sunstone. He said urgently, "I bought it a long time ago. I've kept it with me ever since. Can I put it on you now?" After he spoke, Edward lifted a corner of the blanket. He wanted to tie the cord with the sunstone around my neck. But as soon as he lifted it, he froze. Then he ran out of the room, yelling for the doctor. The gauze on my back was soaked through with blood. It had bled a large, glaring red patch onto the white sheets. There are many reasons for coagulation disorders after leukemia treatment. It could be minimal residual disease or bone marrow fibrosis and dysfunction from long-term treatment. The doctor changed my dressing, his face grim. "The wound is bleeding too much. He needs to be taken to a hospital as soon as possible." Just then, Joseph's phone rang. He answered it and then said to the doctor, "The helicopter is on its way now. You should be here in about an hour." The doctor nodded. "You guys stay with him. Don't let him fall asleep. Even though he's on N4, I'm still worried he might go into shock." After the doctor left, Edward and Joseph sat on opposite sides of the bed. After Edward urged Joseph to check on the helicopter status for the 5th time, Joseph finally lost his patience and threw the phone at Edward. He said furiously, "You call him. The one sending the helicopter is Mr. Smith, your so-called sugar daddy. This is a perfect chance for you to call and ask him what his relationship with Charles really is." I snapped to alertness. I looked at Edward worriedly and called his name, my voice hoarse. Edward handed the phone back to Joseph and said, "I'm sorry." Then he turned to me and said very seriously, "I shouldn't have said that about you. I'm apologizing now. Can you forgive me?" Seeing me nod, Joseph finally said, "Mr. Smith is actually Charles's biological father." He ignored Edward's shocked expression and continued, "Mr. Smith has a family. He only found Charles after Charles's mother passed away. Charles didn't want to acknowledge him until he was diagnosed with leukemia. Mr. Smith got Charles into the best hematology hospital and had Charles's half-brother tested as a match. Luckily, he was a perfect match. But that kid was afraid Charles would fight him for the inheritance. He said that if he was going to donate his bone marrow, the relationship between Mr. Smith and Charles had to be kept a secret. They could never publicly acknowledge each other." Edward lowered his head and was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, So I shot to fame my sophomore year for a commercial, then disappeared a year later. Later, the media found out I had dropped out of college. I was photographed meeting frequently with Mark Smith, the chairman of a well-known local corporation. The media always assumes the worst about relationships they don't understand. And I couldn't clarify anything. But it didn't bother me at all, because just being alive was the best thing possible. It was a blessing in disguise. And maybe because I thought Edward would always believe me. Joseph reminded Edward to keep everything confidential. Then he went to the living room to make a call. I finally got what I used to dream of, a chance to be alone in a room with Edward. But the situation wasn't much better than last night. I said politely to Edward, "You have to film tomorrow, right? You can go back to your room and rest. I'll be fine." I was about to add, "Thanks for taking care of me for so long." But Edward's expression was too strange. It was hard to tell if he was angry or sad. So I stopped talking. "Why?" Edward asked me. "Why didn't you ever tell me you were sick?" I was quiet for a moment. I tried to organize my thoughts in my foggy brain. I was going to. "But when I saw you again, you were so mean." When I saw Edward again, He was even angrier than the day I dumped him. I stopped him. I had planned to say, Edward, please give me some time, and I'll give you a reasonable explanation. But Edward spoke first. Charles, don't even try to tell me you had no choice. Whatever the reason was back then, we're over. Over? If it's over, we can just start again. So I gathered my courage. I stammered, Tch, then, I'll just pursue you again. If I win you over, we'll get back together. Okay? Edward was busy, hard to pursue. I created chance encounters whenever I could. I fought for every opportunity to be on the same stage or in the same production, with very little success. Several times, banking on the fact that Edward wouldn't lose his temper in front of the cameras, I'd secretly ask him, you've already forgiven me, right? Or I'd be bold and say, admit it, you've already fallen in love with me again. Edward would always ignore me. Then he'd move even farther away from me. Chasing him to such a remote place this time was meant to be one last effort. If it didn't work, at least I could give him the good luck charm I'd gotten for him 3 years ago. After reminiscing for a while, I continued, if I told you, it would sound like an excuse, like emotional blackmail. If I didn't, at least if you stopped loving me, you wouldn't feel obligated to get back with me out of resentment or pity. After I finished, Edward had that same unreadable expression of anger and sadness again. Then he suddenly frowned. He leaned in and asked, Charles, why are you shaking? My teeth were chattering from the cold. I mumbled, I don't know, I feel so cold. Edward pressed his palm to my forehead. Then he shot out of the bedroom in a panic. It was so cold. I couldn't help but curl into a ball. My brain seemed to temporarily lose its ability to feel and think. Even when Edward came back with the doctor, I felt no pain as they gave me a shot and rebandaged me. I heard Edward calling my name over and over, begging me to hold on, not to sleep, just for a little while. Then suddenly I felt hot. I kept alternating between cold and hot. I heard the doctor sigh. If this fever doesn't break soon, things could get much worse. Hasn't the helicopter arrived yet? The sounds around me grew distant. My consciousness drifted downwards. My vision went black, then bright again. I came to with a start. I realized I was lying on a stretcher inside a helicopter. Doctors were urgently and methodically putting needles in me, connecting all sorts of tubes. Edward was leaning over my pillow. One hand shielded the top of my head. The other was held in front of my eyes, blocking the dazzling white light from the ceiling. Because of this gesture, Edward and I, in the deafening roar of the helicopter, had our own small secret universe. I glanced at him for a few seconds. Then I said very quietly, one last try. It didn't work and I just made a mess. From now on, I won't chase you anymore. Edward's hand started to tremble. Tears fell to the floor. It's not over yet, he said in a heavy voice. You haven't asked me like you did the other times. The monitor beside the bed suddenly let out a piercing alarm. I felt my heartbeat and breathing start to slow down. Am I dying? Edward choked back a sob and begged me. Charles, ask me one more time. Please. I tried to open my eyes, thought for a moment. I said, my words broken, Edward, you actually forgave me a long time ago. You've already fallen in love with me again, haven't you? Even though my speech was slow, Edward listened patiently until I finished. This time, he didn't walk away impatiently. Yes, Edward sobbed, answering me, yes. I forgave you a long time ago. I already fell in love with you again. Don't go. Charles, please don't go. Edward really is a good person. I thought, hey, thank you. I gave a faint smile and whispered, you don't have to pity me or comfort me. Since we'd met again, he'd been telling me tirelessly every single day how much he despised me. How could he suddenly love me now? Edward was still saying something, but I couldn't hear him clearly anymore. I couldn't hold on any longer and closed my eyes. The small universe Edward had built, shielding my eyes and ears, collapsed instantly. The words we spoke, like they'd been swallowed by a black hole, had no echo. This moment felt like an end, and also like an eternity. In my unconscious state, I dreamed I was back in the apartment Edward and I rented 3 years ago. The leukemia diagnosis was torn to shreds. tossed into the trash can. I picked up the phone and called Edward. After saying I was sorry many times, he came through the door. He looked at me and said calmly, "You don't have to be sorry. If you want to break up, then we'll break up. I accept." He didn't show a trace of surprise or anger. He didn't grip my shoulders tightly, but that made it hurt even more, because worse than not being loved is not being hated. Turns out I've been stuck on that day all this time. I replayed it over and over, tormented by Edward's overwhelming hatred, yet stubbornly searching for hope within it. I was always telling myself, Edward must hate me because he loved me so much. I didn't want to admit that Edward had already ended our relationship. He wanted to move on, but I kept clinging to him, which is why he acted so cold. From beginning to end, I was the only one who was trapped. In my dream, I said a calm goodbye to Edward. Then I walked out the door. Bright daylight, so bright it was hard to open my eyes. I frowned. I felt a wave of pain wash over me. I struggled to open my eyes. I saw a hospital room at night. The monitor blinked steadily, the only rhythmic sound in the silent room. I just twitched a finger, and the person sitting by the bed jolted. He jumped up and pressed the call button. Doctors and nurses streamed in, pushing him far away. "It's good that you're awake," the doctor said. "The bleeding has stopped. You must be careful not to get injured from now on." The doctor removed some of the tubes from my body and then left the room. The room's light was turned off again. In the dimness, the person walked back to the bedside and gently stroked my forehead with a rough palm. He said, "It's not morning yet. Go back to sleep." His tone was calm. His voice was very hoarse. I couldn't see clearly, couldn't tell who it was. But I didn't feel like I was in danger. I soon drifted back to sleep. When I woke up again, I saw Mark Smith standing by the hospital room window. He was furiously yelling into the phone. "I don't care about your show. All I know is that someone is going to pay for this." He hung up and walked over to me. "You're awake," Mark Smith said with an imposing air. "I've hired 2 nurses for you. They'll be here shortly. If you're not satisfied, or if you have any other requests, you must call me immediately." I asked groggily, "Nurses? Wasn't that person last night a nurse?" Mark Smith snorted. "That person won't be coming back again. I filed a lawsuit on your behalf against the entire production team of that reality show, especially that Anna. When you fell, the camera happened to capture her pushing you. I also had people dig up a lot of dirt on her. She'll probably be in jail for 10 years. Mark Smith said a lot more, then ordered me to rest well before leaving. The nurses arrived. They helped me raise the head of the bed. Something fell from under the pillow and hit the floor. A nurse picked it up and showed it to me. "Mr. Sheng, is this yours? Should I put it away for you?" The sunstone dangled on its cord, hard and unbreakable, completely undamaged. But I still said, "No, it's okay. Could you help me mail it somewhere?" A week later, I was discharged from the hospital. Joseph came to pick me up. "Did you see the trending topics?" he asked. I nodded. I saw. The travel reality show was canceled. The producers and crew admitted to not prioritizing guest safety, resulting in a serious oversight. Anna was canceled online, had completely left the entertainment industry, and was facing criminal charges. Joseph closed the car door. Mr. Smith was really furious this time. The SUV pulled smoothly onto the main road. I asked, how did he suddenly learn so much about the entertainment industry? Joseph thought for a moment. It was Edward. Those 2 days you were in the emergency room, Edward never left the hospital. Mr. Smith had his bodyguards drag him out, but he fought his way back in like a madman. Later, he told Mr. Smith a lot of details about what happened to you and the problems with the show, and only then was he allowed to stay. So the person I saw when I first woke up was him. Maybe because our goodbye hadn't been long enough, I still couldn't hear about Edward calmly. I regulated my breathing. I told myself silently, not asking is the first step to becoming cool and mature. So I tucked my chin and mouth into my scarf and looked out the window. After a while, Joseph leaned over and asked, "Asleep?" I said no, and told him seriously, since I can't work for a while, I want to study abroad. The study abroad plan that had been abruptly halted 3 years ago was back on the table. This time, everything went smoothly. A month later, I received my acceptance email. During that time, many fans messaged me asking about my recovery. I answered them one by one. Then I announced I would be taking a break from work for a while, to study abroad. The strange thing was, I started getting occasional anonymous calls. When I'd answer, the other person wouldn't speak. They would just listen to me say hello a few times before hanging up. Joseph suspected it was an obsessed fan and suggested I change my number and hire a bodyguard. I laughed and said that was too dramatic. I was leaving soon anyway. A few days later, I declined Mark Smith and Joseph's offers to see me off. I went to the airport alone. My flight was in the evening. Coincidentally, it was the same time as the flight I was supposed to take 3 years ago. I stood in the crowd at the airport. I couldn't help but think about that day 3 years ago. I never canceled the ticket I booked with Edward. 30 minutes before takeoff, I got a boarding reminder from the airline. The pain I had been trying to suppress erupted at that moment. I ripped the 4 from my hand and fled the hospital for the airport. I wanted to see Edward one more time, maybe for the last time. But I didn't see Edward that day. The airport was huge, so many people. Not one of them was him. Blood from the needle prick dripped from my fingertips onto the floor. I thought miserably, I can't find him. There's nothing I can do. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The Flight 4, the airport announcement suddenly crackled to life, interrupting my thoughts. I pretended to look for my gate, but I was actually scanning the crowd. I thought, if that person came to see me off, I would say goodbye in a mature, dignified way. But just like 3 years ago, I left the airport alone. After arriving in the US, I first dropped my luggage off at the apartment I had rented in advance. The landlady was a very kind elderly white woman. She enthusiastically told me about the neighborhood. Then she pointed to the door across the hall and said, "What a coincidence! Your neighbor is also a young man from China. I'm sure you two will get along wonderfully." I was a little surprised. "He's Chinese too?" she said excitedly. "Yes, and he's as handsome as you are, like an international superstar." I cracked a smile, thinking, okay, nothing to be surprised about. After all, where in the world aren't there Chinese people? After putting my luggage away, I went to the school to check in with my professor. The professor kindly went over the course schedule. Then there was a sudden knock on his office door. As the professor got up to open it, he said with a smile, "I forgot to tell you the good news. The new TA I hired is also Chinese." With that, the door opened. Edward stood in the doorway, looking over at me. He had a new haircut, a little shorter than before. He was wearing a khaki trench coat and holding a huge bouquet of flowers in one arm. No one could deny that Edward was someone who stood out, no matter where he was. He was incredibly handsome, yet he seemed reserved and composed. Our eyes met for just a second, and my heart suddenly started pounding violently. Realizing I wasn't as calm as I'd thought, I cursed myself for being so weak. Then I straightened my back a bit. My composure was a little too arrogant. "Hello, hello." Edward walked up to me. He handed me the bouquet and said, "Welcome." There were too many questions in my head. Like, why was Edward here? Why was he my professor's TA? Why did he buy me flowers? The atmosphere was a bit tense. So as not to give the professor a bad impression of Chinese people, I took the flowers and said thank you. After leaving the office, I shoved the bouquet back into Edward's arms. "Sorry, I can't accept these." Edward asked, "Why?" I answered decisively, "Because we're not in that kind of relationship." A faint smile played on Edward's lips. What kind of relationship? Right? What kind of relationship were we in? Exes? I guess so. But do exes give each other flowers? Seeing me frowning and silent, Edward said, "Mr. Shang, it seems our current relationship is that of teacher and student." Looks like I was overthinking it. So, as a TA, is it not okay for me to give a bouquet of flowers to a student from my home country as a welcome gift? I looked into Edward's sincere eyes. I said reluctantly, "It's fine." He was the one with all the suspicious behavior. Why was it me who seemed to be full of holes? The apartment was close to the school. The person behind me kept following me, right up to my apartment door. Please stop following me. I turned around and said seriously. Edward was clearly taken aback. Then he took a key out of his pocket. I live here, because he didn't say I live here too, and his stunned expression was completely genuine. I decided to believe it was all a coincidence for now. A day ago, I never would have thought that Edward would become my teacher and my neighbor. It was so cliché. But given our current, clearly defined student-teacher relationship, I couldn't ask any more questions. I didn't sleep well that night. I came up with a rule for interacting with Edward. Keep a distance. Be polite. But the next day, that rule was on the verge of collapsing under Edward's repeated tests. A strange number kept texting me. Hi, this is Edward. Please save my number. I made soup dumplings this morning. Do you want some? I made too much sweet and sour pork for lunch. Wanna come eat? I brought hot pot base from home. If I make hot pot, will you come? Do you want some? Want some? Some? Even after a week of being tortured by salads and greasy meat, I would never ever give in. I screamed in my head 1,000 times. I would rather starve to death, jump from this building, than eat a single bite of your food. Edward, this is delicious. I sat at Edward's dining table, stuffing my face. The chicken soup wontons in my bowl were perfectly thin-skinned and full of filling, sprinkled with bright green scallions. Tiny droplets of oil floated on the clear, golden broth. With one bite, I felt my deprived body and soul being comforted by the motherland. Dignity is important, but food is innocent and precious. It would be such a waste to throw it out. I drank the last drop of chicken soup from my bowl. I leaned back in my chair. Food coma. My eyes glazed over as I watched Edward clear the dishes and go into the kitchen to wash them. I couldn't help but say, with cooking skills like yours in the US student community, burp, have you considered opening a restaurant? Edward glanced back at me and smiled, leaving me to stare at his back. The well-tailored shirt hugged his body. In the play of light and shadow, I could see the outline of his powerful muscles. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing strong forearms. His wrist bones were prominent. Even the black apron tied around his waist added a certain allure. My throat tightened. Edward caught my eye. Still hungry, I shot up from my chair. I fled towards the door. I'm full, I can't eat another bite. Bye. A few days later, Edward simply sent me his homemade menu. On the phone, Edward asked, "See what you want for dinner tonight?" I ordered 2 dishes. I said, embarrassed, I can't just keep eating for free. How about I pay you? Edward's tone turned a little cold. Charles, I didn't come here to be a chef. Then I won't. Charles, Edward interrupted me. Cooking for friends, eating with friends, is something I enjoy. So, can we be friends now? Is that okay? Friend is a general term. There are many kinds. There are acquaintances, close friends, and those in between. What kind of friend was Edward talking about? After a few months of being friends, a pipe suddenly burst in Edward's apartment. It was temporarily unlivable. He calmly packed his bags and focused on finding a temporary place online. I picked at some non-existent dead skin on my hand and asked, "Find anything?" "I did," Edward said, "but the new place is on the other side of the city, far from school." Then he suddenly said, "Can I borrow your kitchen?" I looked at him blankly. "For what?" Edward smiled benevolently. "I won't be able to cook for you for a while. Before I go, I want to make some more wontons for you. You can freeze them and just boil them when you want to eat." I stared at him for a moment. On impulse, I opened my own door. I watched as Edward brought in all his pots, pans, and luggage. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. As Edward mixed the filling and rolled out the dough, he said regretfully, "Do you know how to make chicken broth? Will you be okay with just boiling the wontons in water? It's a shame the sweet and sour pork and mapo tofu can't be frozen. I was planning on making black bean noodles and sweet and sour pork for you tomorrow. Guess that's not happening." Edward was definitely doing this on purpose, saying things like that right when he was about to leave. I said coldly, Just stop talking and make the wontons. Edward didn't say another word. He silently made a lot of wontons. His phone suddenly rang. After he answered, I vaguely heard the person on the other end say regret and very sorry. What's wrong? Did something happen? Edward frowned slightly. I can't move into the new place. I need to find another one. Oh, I said. Then you should look for one. Stop making wontons. It's okay. I can stay in a hotel tonight. Edward smiled. I'm not in a hurry now. I can cook you dinner before I go. He cooked a bowl, seasoned it simply with seaweed and tiny shrimp. Then he helped me put the rest of the wontons in the freezer. There, enjoy. Edward took off his apron and grabbed his suitcase. I'm leaving. The door opened and closed. The room suddenly became too quiet. The sound of the suitcase rolling outside. The footsteps going down the stairs. They all sounded particularly clear. Don't get attached. I told myself. I sternly warned myself. Don't make the same mistake again. But if we were just normal friends, why couldn't I offer appropriate help? It was so contradictory. Suddenly, there was a loud bang from the hallway. Then the sound of something tumbling down the stairs. I threw open the door and ran out to see Edward's suitcase broken on the stairs. His things were scattered everywhere. A drunk white guy was apologizing to Edward. I walked over and started picking up the things on the floor one by one. But unexpectedly, I saw the good luck charm. The piece of peach wood that Edward had found, placed under my pillow, and then secretly taken back. This is mine. With that thought, I clutched the charm and ran back to my room. There was a knock on the door. I yelled, "Go away. Please don't come back. Just go." But Edward acted like he didn't hear me. He kept knocking. I couldn't take it anymore. I threw open the door and screamed, "What do you want?" Edward's face was a little pale. He said in a low voice, "The charm. Give it back. I'm the one who got the charm. It has nothing to do with you. You gave it to me. Well, I'm taking it back now. I don't want to give it to you anymore. Don't be like this, Charles." Edward looked terrible. His tone was pleading. "Don't be like this," I said fiercely. "I'm the one who should be telling you not to be like this. Why did you come back and bother me? You could have kept moving forward, left the past and me far behind. Why did you have to show up in front of me again?" Edward looked at me in pain. He said hoarsely, "I didn't move forward. I was always waiting for you." He pulled out the necklace he wore around his neck and placed it in his palm. It was the sunstone, but I had clearly had the nurse mail it back to our old apartment. 3 years had passed. The place was run down. I thought it had been abandoned long ago. "You went back?" Edward shook his head. "I never left." He looked at me and said, "I was always waiting for you." I stumbled back a step. "But we're over." "We're not over." Edward rushed forward and pulled me into his arms. "If you don't want to get back together, then I'll pursue you again. Okay?" I had to admit, Edward's intentions had been obvious. The special attention, the manufactured chance encounters, the lame excuses for giving gifts, the creation of opportunities to be alone. He wasn't very original, so I should have noticed the signs a long time ago. From beginning to end, the one who pushed me away and the one who chased me were the same person. The human heart must be more complex than logic. An attraction never follows logic. That's why we fall in love with the same person, or the same type of person over and over again. In the few months I'd been here, my soul felt like it was split in two every day. One half was constantly longing. The other half was forcing myself to hide farther away, to escape Edward's name. Now, Edward was holding me so tightly, fusing my divided soul back together. "Charles," he said, "give me one last chance, too." Okay. Not long after, Edward was allowed to place the sunstone around my neck. At that moment, many memories of me and Edward flashed through my mind again. The good and the bad, just like how the world is beautiful, but bad things are always happening. So many regrets. It made a broken, imperfect love seem less terrifying. Trying again isn't shameful, and love's compound interest doesn't contradict cutting your losses. In order not to be too hard on myself, I chose to be hard on Edward. I whispered Edward's name. I said, "You can't be mean to me anymore. You have to be very, very good to me." He leaned in and said, "Okay." Then he gently touched my cheek with his hand. His hand was hot. So were his lips.